Hey, sixth graders, today we are going to continue with RP3b and we are going to solve unit rate problems. Okay, so just as a quick review, a ratio is a comparison of two quantities. It becomes a rate when the two quantities are different units of measurement. And then it becomes a unit rate when within those two quantities, the first quantity, we're trying to see how many of the first quantities corresponds with 1 unit of the second quantity. I also want to remind you that a ratio can be written as a fraction. So we're going to be using the fraction setup to solve our problems today. And just a quick reminder, that fraction bar means to divide, okay? So let's jump in and get started. Let's talk about distance, okay? We see rates used when you hear the discussion of miles per hour, how quickly you can travel somewhere in an hour. Maybe if you are a football player and you are researching other athletes or basketball players, you may look at their stats and look at how quickly they can run. So maybe a distance per second, okay? So that is a unit rate. So we're going to talk about how to solve that today. So distance equals rate times time, okay? So in order to solve for just the rate, we are going to use our inverse operations to swap that distance formula to get rate on the one side by itself. So the inverse of multiplying is dividing. So we would divide time on both sides, getting us to the point where a rate equals the distance divided by the time it takes you to get there. So if I was setting up a rate by itself, I would look at just the distance and time, or just the two quantities that are different measurements. So in this example, it says 50 feet in 8 seconds. So our distance is feet and our time is seconds. So remember how, you may remember from the first video about ratios that the order is so critical. And that's the same thing in rates too. You have to get that order correct so that the relationship can have the same value, okay? So I have my distance is feet, my time is seconds. And then I look back at my problem and it's 50 feet and 8 seconds. Now, if you will notice, I look at the unit first and then plug in the correct number. Because if I put 8 as my numerator and 50 as my denominator, it would change the value, all right? Now, in order to get it into a unit rate, I divide this so that my denominator is equal to 1. So I would plug into my calculator or divide on your own, 50 divided by 8, and that turns into the unit rate 6 25/100 feet per second. And this is per every 1 second. That's what makes it a unit rate. It's a rate up here because we are still comparing feet and seconds, but the seconds are 8 and our denominator is not down to 1. So that's an example of using the formula for distance, rate, and time. Now, what if the question doesn't give me a formula? It may say this: Allison's car can drive 450 miles on just 12 gallons of gas. What is the mileage per gallon? Now, again, that order is so critical. You probably remember from our previous videos that the first thing I did was underline our categories for our quantities so that we can put them in order correctly. If you will notice, my words came first every time before the numbers, okay? So always go back and put your words first and then make sure that your numbers correspond with those words to get your order correct. So in this example question, I'm looking for miles per gallon, and this is everyday life, y'all. You probably have this discussion or have heard this discussion in your household about miles per gallon. If you are ever in a discussion about buying a new vehicle, you want to know how many miles for every gallon that car or that vehicle can go, because that is important for everyday life, for saving money on gas. So let's look at this. The rate is mileage per gallon. And I know that order from my question, mileage per gallon. And if you'll remember back to like 4th grade, you probably learned that the word per is most often used as division. So miles per gallon, my words come first. Now I'm going to go back to my problem and I'm going to write down, okay, well, how many miles were there? There were 450 miles. Then how many gallons were there? There were 12 gallons. Okay, so this is a rate because my denominator is not to 1, but I am comparing 2 quantities of different measurement. Now, if I divide that out, then my denominator does become 1, and I get 37 5/10. So my unit rate becomes 37 5/10 miles per every 1 gallon. So if you are working on a unit rate question, the first thing you need to do is write down your words of the order of your ratio or your rate. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to fill in those words with the numbers, and then you're going to divide so that your denominator equals 1. All right, check out our next video for more information on ratios and proportions.